Sae and Jihan were all set for the conference. Jihan noticed Sae was a bit shaky, probably because it was her first public appearance since her dad's work. He reassured her, reminding her how confident she was in the last broadcast and that they hadn't done anything wrong, so there was no need to act otherwise. Sae agreed and smiled. As they entered the lobby, they saw that most of the people were already there, eager to hear what they had to say. Mr. Park was getting everything ready as Jihan had requested. Jihan had asked for an auction of the Sword King's collection, aiming to attract the attention of the Inyo Self-Defense Force from Japan. Mr. Park was surprised by this plan, but impressed by Jihan's foresight. Jihan explained that the items selected for the auction, like the Sword King's battle connector with stored battle data, would surely catch Japan's interest, possibly even prompting them to come themselves. He believed this auction was the last chance to change public opinion. He asked Mr. Park to keep an eye on the Inyo Self-Defense Force. Just then, Thea's relatives showed up, wanting to enter the room. However, they weren't allowed in. Sae asked them why they were there, and they blamed her and Jihan for selling off items at auction. Sae stood her ground, pointing out that her aunt and uncle had used her dad's name for scams before being chased out. She questioned if they thought so little of her, and if they were only after her dad's fortune. Her relatives were furious at her truthfulness. Sae made it clear that the wealth her dad, the Sword King, left behind belonged solely to her, and her relatives had no right to argue otherwise. She asked Mr. Park to escort them out, as they weren't family. Jihan praised Sae for being pretty cool, and together they entered the conference room. The photographers were surprised to see Jihan and snapped pictures as they entered. People bombarded Jihan with questions about the purpose of the auction and why overseas groups were allowed to participate. Sae felt uncomfortable with the constant flash of the cameras. They faced attack questions about the Sword King's property being the source of money and why they were giving it up. Jihan had enough. He used his force power to destroy all the cameras and declared that this was an auction event, not an interview. He asked for some silence before starting the auction. There were 3 items up for auction. First was the Sword King's battle net connector, which reduced pain by 99% and contained valuable stored data. This included analysis of the Sword King himself and other top players in Korea and East Asia, which was especially important with the Korea-Japan match approaching. A representative from the Inyo Japan Self-Defense Force, Takeda Kazuo, raised his hand to make the first bid. He offered 5 billion yen for all the items and requested a private meeting with Sae. Jihan saw through Takeda Kazuo's intentions and refused the private meeting, stating that there were no private meetings here. Takeda Kazuo's bodyguard, Shadow, intervened, showing she was a formidable player, though not on the level of the Sword King. Jihan, angered by their persistence, prepared to use his power, his eyes gleaming with determination.